5 years into my marriage, I discovered that the marriage my husband, Ethan, and I held was a fake. My supposed 5-year marriage legally never existed. The loving husband I thought I had actually married someone else. I didn't argue, didn't question, I just quietly walked away. But later, my husband regretted it. I handed my physical exam report to the nurse and asked, "Can't I pay with our family plan now? Can I use my husband's health?" They took my ID, typed in the information on her computer, and slightly frowned. "Miss Audrey, your marital status shows unmarried. We need your spouse's ID and marriage to create a file." I was stunned. "That's impossible. My husband and I registered 5 years ago." They turned the screen towards me. In the system, my marital status was indeed blank. My fingertips grew cold. I pulled our marriage from my bag. "See? This is my marriage. Could there be a system error?" They took the certificate, examined it carefully, and her expression became subtle. "Your certificate. It might be problematic." She picked up a UV light pen from the desk and shone it on the official seal. A genuine county's office seal would reveal a security under UV light, but mine showed nothing. I remembered that day 5 years ago, how Ethan insisted on using some VIP channel, saying it would allow the county's office to process our papers privately. Now, I realized it was all a lie. I walked out of the hospital in a daze, the early summer sun stinging my eyes. Standing on the steps, I suddenly remembered Ethan from when I was 18. I had just started college and casually mentioned I wanted to try chocolate chip cookies from a renowned brand in Old. He skipped his afternoon classes, rode his bicycle across the entire city, and managed to buy the last box just before the shop closed. When he delivered them to my dorm, his white was soaked with sweat, yet he still smiled and said, "Quick, try them. They're best warm." On my 25th birthday, I was pulling an all-nighter in the lab, working on my thesis. He waited downstairs until 2 a.m., holding an insulated with tiramisu that he'd finally perfected after 5 failed attempts. I chided him for not going home earlier, and he kissed my fingers, saying, "I want to be there for every important moment of yours." And now, at 30, standing on the hospital steps, clutching that torn, fake marriage, I finally understood that those sweet moments were nothing more than setups for today's absurd drama. I walked out of the hospital in a daze, clutching the marriage that had been declared fake. Without realizing it, I found myself at the downtown. I mechanically pushed open the glass, and the cold air rushed over me. Then, I saw them. Ethan stood in front of the jewelry, impeccably. Beside him, Tiffany was trying on a diamond, her head bowed. "Mr. Ethan is so thoughtful towards his wife," the sales beamed. "This is a limited edition. There are only 3 pairs in the entire city." Tiffany shyly pressed her lips together. When she looked up at Ethan, her eyes were filled with starlight. "Babe, do you like it? Babe." That endearment was like a dull knife, slowly slicing into my heart. Even more ironic was the diamond necklace around her neck. Last month, on my birthday, Ethan had given me the exact same one, calling it a one-of-a-kind gift. And now, it was on another woman's neck. Ethan gently smoothed her long hair, his voice doting. "If you like it, buy it." The associate sighed enviously. "You two truly are a perfect match, a stunning couple." I stood behind a marble, clutching the prenatal results tightly. A sudden sharp pain shot through my abdomen, as if my baby was also weeping for this absurd drama. My nails had dug into my palm at some point, but I felt no pain. So, the happy life of these past few years had all been a lie. Since was so afraid for me to know, I would make sure he understood the consequences of deceiving me. I turned and left, seeking out my mentor. It was empty in the evening, only the innermost office light was on. I gently knocked, hearing the familiar voice say, "Come in." Professor looked up from the screen full of code, his eyes widening when he saw my drenched appearance. "Audrey?" "Professor," my voice was calmer than I expected. "Did you mention there was still a faculty opening at Cambridge?" He stood to get me a blanket. "Dry off first." Only then did I realize I had been trembling. Professor said, "The professors at Cambridge truly admire your new ideas." He paused for a moment. "But a more important position is at ETH Zurich. They need someone to lead their newly established AI ethics." "How long would that take?" I clenched my fists. Professor handed me some documents. "Expedited visa processing will take 2 weeks." I lowered my head, then decided to ask, "Professor, is there a way to get a new identity for me?" Professor retrieved a passport and plane from a hidden compartment in his bookshelf. "Use this identity, Moran, a visiting scholar at the University of Zurich." "Thank you," I said, feeling the weight of those 3 words. He shook his head. When you cracked that encryption system at MIT back then, I knew you would go far. When I pushed open the front, the rich aroma of butter mixed with garlic wafted towards me. Ethan was facing away from me, stirring pasta, the cuffs of his black shirt rolled up to his elbows. He turned, smiling, a touch of tomato sauce on his nose. "Babe, you're back. Dinner will be ready soon." Chilled white wine sat on the dining table. My memory, however, flashed back to that summer night. I was dragging my suitcase, brought back from abroad, and heard a sound in the darkness. A black Mercedes was subtly rocking in the corner. I don't remember how I was drawn to it, how I saw Ethan cupping that girl's face and kissing her. Audrey. I still remember Ethan's expression when he tumbled out of the car, that mix of panic and embarrassment, but absolutely no guilt. His explanation sounded rehearsed countless times. "She just looked too much like you, I couldn't help myself." Afterward, he knelt at my apartment every day, showing me text, "I'll make her resign tomorrow. I'll never see her again." I softened and chose to forgive him. But 3 months later, at the company's annual meeting, I saw her, dressed in an assistant's uniform, fixing his tie. Ethan said, "I told her to resign, but she then applied for the general assistant position on her own merit, and I couldn't manipulate things behind the scenes." Now that I think about it, this absurd drama had signs all along. How ridiculous, I was the most laughable supporting character in their love story. He served the medium steak in front of me, drizzled with peppercorn and my favorite asparagus. The and fork were arranged flawlessly, just like every anniversary over the past 5 years. I stared at his slender fingers as he cut the meat. It suddenly occurred to me that these hands had trembled as they unbuttoned my clothes on our first night, and they had also gripped Tiffany's waist, pressing her against the office desk that very evening. He got up and moved behind me, resting his chin on my head. "Babe, I missed you so much." After dinner, he suddenly suggested watching a movie. He chose nodding. When we saw the scenic scene, he squeezed my fingers. "Remember? We walked like that in Boston too." Of course, I remembered. Back then, he'd cupped my face and said company meetings are more important than honeymoons, then tossed aside a multi-million-dollar to stay with me. Halfway through the movie, Ethan's phone lit up. He glanced at the phone screen, his thumb unconsciously rubbing his left wristwatch, a habit when he lied. "Urgent tax forms from finance," he said, thoughtfully pulling the blanket higher onto my shoulder as he stood up. "You go to sleep, don't wait for me." "Go ahead," I said, wrapping myself tighter in the blanket he'd draped over me. "I'll W. At the ending." The moment the front closed, I threw off the blanket and rushed into the garage. His lights hadn't even disappeared around the street corner yet. I started the spare car he didn't know I knew about, a lucky Tiffany had given him still hung from the rearview mirror. The tower's 23rd floor was brightly lit. Through the blinds, I saw Tiffany, wearing the same lace as me, twirling his leftover pasta with a fork. He leaned in, smiling, biting the other end. As their lips met, she deliberately let sauce get on his tie. "Oh, you." Tiffany's voice drifted out through the slightly ajar window. "Didn't Ms. Audrey satisfy you?" He lifted her onto the office desk piled with documents. "We're a legitimate." A legitimate, indeed. Just as I was struck by that phrase, "Ethan," she purred, dragging her fingertip across the sauce stain on his tie. "Where's the lucky charm bead? You promised it to me today." My heart suddenly stopped when Ethan pulled a velvet from his inner pocket. It was the blessed charm I had knelt in prayer for hours until my knees were bruised to get when Ethan was in a car accident. The abbot said the vermilion color could ward off negativity, and I had truly knelt in prayer for hours until my knees were bruised to get it. "So pretty." Tiffany held the bead up to the light, the red glow reflecting on her face like blood. "You're giving me this? Ms. Audrey won't be mad, will she?" "Why would she be mad?" "I'll just say I accidentally lost it on a business trip," Ethan said, kneeling to tie the red string for her, his movements practiced as if he'd done it thousands of times. "If not, I'll just have her go kneel for another one." I bit my lower lip hard until I tasted blood. Tiffany suddenly tugged his tie. "I want you to string it for me yourself." She magically produced a fine and red, just like she did for you back then. When the needle pricked Ethan's fingertip, my stomach spasmed. That year, in my sophomore year, he broke his leg playing basketball. I stayed up all night in his hospital room, using embroidery thread to weave the aromatic wood beads my grandpa had given me into a bracelet. The thread was too thick to pass through the holes, so I used a strand of my hair to guide it, pricking my fingertips until they were covered in blood. Now, he held the needle, and a drop of blood rolled onto Tiffany's foot. She giggled, licking away the blood, her vivid red tongue like a serpent's tongue. I took one last look at the entangled couple, then turned and walked towards the elevator. The mirrored surface reflected my pale face. As the car drove out of the garage, the lights on the 23rd floor were still bright. I rolled down the car, and the night wind rushed in, blowing away that marriage. At 4 a.m., I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the mansion, looking at a text Ethan had sent on my phone screen. Urgent situation with the Sterling Waterford project requires my personal attention. Won't be able to stay with you these 2 days, babe. Get some rest. I stared at the message for a long time, my fingertip hovering over the screen, finally replying with just okay. 2 days later, Ethan returned, looking worn, his suitcase filled with so-called Waterford, though the elegantly packaged pastries were clearly from a renowned brand in our city. I brought you a gift, he said, smiling, pushing a blue box towards me. Inside was a diamond necklace with a tiny computer-shaped pendant. I let him put it on me. I have a surprise tonight, he said, kissing my forehead. Ethan had booked the entire contemporary gallery. In the center of the exhibition hall hung a huge digital oil painting. It was my neural algorithm, published in an international journal, which he'd commissioned someone to transform into art. The surrounding walls were covered with my academic achievements over the years. Every thesis page was framed like a famous painting. Mr. Ethan is truly a model husband, Mr. Peterson exclaimed, raising his champagne. My partner doesn't even know what my thesis was about. Audrey loves these, Ethan said, putting his arm around my waist, his fingers gently caressing my side. I want to commemorate every important moment of hers in a special way. His voice was so tender, it almost made me believe that what I'd seen in the office that night was just a nightmare. Until my calf started aching faintly, protesting from standing too long, and my old injury flared up again. Tired? He noticed my stiffness and immediately beckoned to his assistant. Go to my car and get the spare flat. They're in the gray box in the trunk. They hurried away, and Ethan continued to chat and laugh with the guests. 20 minutes later, the glass of the art gallery were pushed open, and a damp wind, mixed with rain, swept into the main hall. Tiffany stood at the entrance, soaked through, water dripping from her hair. She held a shoe, timidly looking at Ethan. Mr. Ethan, the shoes you wanted. I recognized the diamond-studded high heels on her feet. Ethan had custom-made them in Italy last month, claiming they were a gift for a client's wife. Ethan's smile froze. Tiffany staggered towards me, a winding trail of rainwater dragging behind her. Miss Audrey, she said, handing me the shoe. I'm sorry, I was just nearby. Thank you. I took the shoe and calmly went to the restroom with the items. As I turned, I heard Ethan's low reprimand. Who told you to come? Tiffany's sobs cut through the stagnant air like a dull knife. You said to be on standby. By the time I changed shoes, the heavy was pouring down. I left the restroom but heard the sloshing water sounds coming from the stairwell. Through the fire door crack, Ethan was pressing Tiffany against the wall, deep in a kiss. Her leg wrapped around his waist, one diamond-studded high heel dangled precariously from her toe, the other had already fallen into a puddle. On his wrist, the hand supporting her hip still wore the sandalwood bra. Selena had given him, he'd said it would calm nerves and promote sleep. Don't. Someone will see us. Tiffany gasped, pushing him, her nails digging into the back of his neck. There was a mole on his neck in that exact spot. The first time we spent the night together, I used to joke it was a flaw in his soul. What are you afraid of? Ethan bit her ear. Don't you want this? Rainwater dripped from the ventilation onto my hand, as cold as the first ring he'd given me in my sophomore year. That year, the library's heating was broken, and he had wrapped my feet in his jacket to warm them, promising to get married after graduation. And now, in the dark stairwell, he was caressing another woman's body, coaxing her with the same sweet words he once used on me. Be good, just a little longer. When I returned to the exhibition hall, my hair and clothes were half wet. Yet appeared with Tiffany as if nothing had happened, his custom-tailored suit impeccably pressed as if he'd just stepped out of a changing room. Allow me to introduce our new project assistant, he said, his palm resting on her lower back, his fingers caressing restlessly. She's interested in algorithmic art, so I brought her along to learn. I took a hot towel from the server and wiped my wrist. A vein pulsed wildly when he first kissed me, now it was still as stagnant water. The guests exchanged knowing smiles. Tiffany obediently followed me, looking at the exhibits, occasionally exclaiming exaggeratedly, the mathematical model in this paper is amazing. As the exhibition neared its end, the heavy intensified. We stood under the art gallery's portico, waiting for the driver, when Ethan suddenly received a call, needing to return to sign documents. He hesitated, looking at me, then Tiffany. You go, I said, handing the umbrella to Tiffany. Let her wait with me. He squeezed my fingers in relief. That gesture used to be our secret signal, meaning I'll be back soon. But as he turned now, he mad. A more discreet gesture to Tiffany. His thumb brushed his lower lip, the secret signal for our rendezvous on the library rooftop during our passionate early days. Headlights pierced the rain, and the screech of tires skidding suddenly erupted. A black SUV lost control and swerved onto the sidewalk, heading straight for us. In the last second, I felt a violent shove from behind. The world spun. When I hit the marble, I saw Tiffany's panicked face contorted behind the curtain of rain, and my necklace flew off, crushed to pieces by the car's wheels. In the throbbing pain, I vaguely saw 18-year-old Ethan rushing towards me. That year, I'd fallen during the 800-meter race at the sports meet, and he'd also run across the entire field, his white sneakers covered in mud. But now, he was holding Tiffany's shoulders, checking if she was hurt, not even noticing me, curled up 10 feet away. Professor. The art gallery's security guard rushed over. The ambulance will be here any minute. Rainwater washed away the blood from my forehead. Before consciousness faded, I heard Tiffany, her voice tearful, say, she ran out herself. I couldn't pull her back in time. I floated in boundless darkness, suddenly smelling disinfectant mixed with rust. Opening my eyes, I found myself standing in the rain in a university alley, 22-year-old Ethan being beaten against a wall by 3 thugs. Hand over the USB drive. The leader, a blonde, kicked him hard in the stomach. It was the encryption program I had developed. Someone had offered $200,000 for the source code. Blood seeped from the corner of Ethan's mouth, but he was smiling. You don't even deserve her talent. Another punch landed on his ribs. I heard a clear crack. He curled up, protecting the pocket on his chest, which held the first love I had given him. Stop. In my dream, I rushed over and hugged him. His blood-stained fingers stroked my tears, leaving a streak of blood on the wall. Don't cry. His smell of disinfectant suddenly grew stronger. I struggled to open my eyes in reality. The beeping of the cardiac was like a dull knife, shattering the dream. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, and the ambiguous sound of water came from the hospital room's restroom. The glass showed 2 overlapping figures. Tiffany's silhouette pressed against the sink was clearly visible, one of her legs wrapped around Ethan's waist, exactly the position I'd used when I helped him to the hospital in my dream. What if she suddenly wakes up? Tiffany's suppressed gasps were like rusty needles. The doctor said a concussion means she'll be asleep until at least tomorrow morning. Ethan's voice was muffled by the sound of fabric rubbing. I immediately closed my eyes. The shadow of my eyelashes on my cheek should be enough to fool any scrutiny from the bedside. Footsteps approached, and the scent of cologne on Ethan couldn't conceal the smell of desire. Audrey? His fingers brushed my forehead. The wedding on his ring finger felt cold. This hand, which 5 minutes ago might have been gripping Tiffany's waist, was now gently tucking the blanket around me. The doctor said you have a mild concussion. I pretended to wake with a start, my unfocused gaze first landing on his wrinkled shirt collar. A bright red lipstick was there. Water. I rasped. Ethan, relieved, went to pour water. Thank you. I took the water glass, letting the drops roll onto my hospital gown. This was safer than crying. Ethan immediately took tissues to wipe it, as earnestly as he had once wiped my tears in the alley. Tiffany emerged from the restroom, her skirt wrinkled like crumpled candy wrapper. Mr. Ethan asked me to bring some clean clothes. She deliberately slowed her movement as she handed me the bag, then suddenly dropped it. As she bent to pick it up, her ankle, below her skirt, flashed past my eyes. The Lucky Charm bead was gone, replaced by a grotesque surgical scar. Cut by broken glass due. Ring the car accident, she said, noticing my gaze, and suddenly pressed hard on my hand with the 4 drip. Thanks to Mr. Ethan, he carried me to the emergency room. The 4 drip immediately filled with blood, a thin red line climbing up the transparent tube. Ethan frowned and snatched the 4 drip from her hand. Don't hurt her. That sentence was like a key, suddenly unlocking a dusty box in my memory. In my senior year, I was burned by sulfuric acid during a lab class, and he burst into the women's dorm to apply medicine for me, frowning just the same way. Don't hurt her. His hands trembled more than mine then. When left, she secretly slipped something into Ethan's pocket. From the shape, it looked like a hotel card. Get some more sleep. Ethan dimmed the bedside lamp, his thumb stroking the needle mark on my hand. That touch reminded me of the night before his thesis defense, when I had soothed his restless nerves in the same way. Now, the same gesture was being used on a wound left by the woman he had just been with. The moonlight shifted to his suit pants pocket, the metallic edge of the hotel card faintly visible beneath the fabric. I counted his breaths until I was sure he was asleep, then quietly reached for the phone under my pillow. Outside the window, the morning light was spreading across the city skyline. After 7 days in the hospital, Ethan finally left for the first time. Urgent company business trip, babe. I've arranged someone to look after you, he said, bending down to kiss my bandaged forehead. What urgent company business? Tiffany sent me a text 10 minutes later, a screenshot of her chat with Ethan. Miss Audrey got into a car accident that day. I was right there and saw her covered in blood. The doctor said it's PTSD and she needs a change of environment to recover. How about we go on vacation? You promised me last time. Ethan had simply replied, don't be scared, babe. Your husband will take you traveling now. How about the Maldives? I stared expressionlessly at my phone, sending a text message to my mentor, asking him to pick me up. Then I drifted back to sleep. I don't know how long I slept, but then I heard a familiar voice say, this is my student. I opened my eyes and saw my mentor standing by the bed, his face stern, holding a set of forged medical records. The doctor hesitated for a moment, then nodded and left. My mentor leaned closer, his voice very low, don't speak. Listen carefully. From now on, Audrey, this person, will completely disappear. I blinked, indicating understanding. He produced an injection and administered it into my vein. Get some sleep. When you wake, you'll have a new identity. Ethan stayed with Tiffany in the Maldives for 4 days. The ocean waves, champagne, Tiffany's coquettish laugh, everything was as perfect as his carefully designed illusion. Until the evening of the 4th day, he was lying on a beach chair, scrolling through his phone, when he suddenly realized Audrey hadn't replied to his messages for 3 days. He frowned, tapped open the chat, and the last message was still his, sent 3 days ago. Babe, this project here is very important. I still need another week before I can return. Her reply had been only 2 calm words, okay. Scrolling further up, he saw an even earlier message, babe, I'm working late today, won't be coming back, and she hadn't even questioned it further. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. Ethan? Tiffany emerged from the ocean, water droplets sliding down her collarbone. She pressed against him, her fingertips suggestively tracing his chest. Why aren't you paying attention to me? He stood up abruptly. I'll have my assistant go back. Tiffany's smile froze. What's wrong? Audrey hasn't replied to my messages for days. He called his assistant, his tone cold and hard. Go to my house and see if she's throwing a fit again. It was empty. When the assistant pushed open the door, dust motes floated in the sunlight. The called, trembling, Mr. Ethan, the madam is gone. There was dead silence on the other end for a few seconds, followed by a loud crash, like a phone being smashed. Ethan rushed home, it was already deep into the night. He kicked open every door, searched every corner, even overturned the dust-covered storage boxes in the basement. Nothing. There was nothing. As if she had never existed. In the walk-in closet, all her clothes were gone, leaving only empty hangers. The skincare products on her dressing had vanished completely, not even a single strand of hair left behind. Finally, he collapsed onto the floor. Suddenly, he remembered the surveillance installed at home. He would surely be able to see when she disappeared. Ethan stood in his study, his finger hovering in the air, hesitant to press the playback button on the surveillance system. He took a deep breath and clicked on the surveillance records on the computer. The screen lit up, showing a high-definition video. That day, at the art gallery entrance, after Ethan and his assistant had gone aside to deal with something, the out-of-control car swerved towards them. I, along with everyone else, tried to dodge it in fear. But, I don't know when, appeared behind me and violently shoved me, making the car hit me directly. Ethan's breathing suddenly hitched. Audrey, with a pale face, lay on the ground, her lips trembling, as if she wanted to say something, but couldn't. That was a fear he had never seen before. In the footage, she was curled up, broken sobs escaping her throat, while Ethan in the corner of the frame, held Tiffany the entire time, without looking back even once. No, Ethan suddenly stood up, his chair crashing to the floor with a loud bang. This is impossible. He had personally destroyed her. His suddenly vibrated, Tiffany's name flashed on the screen. Ethan? Where are you? I saw a dress while shopping. Come help me take a look, okay? Her sickly sweet voice came through the receiver. Now Lee. Coo, a serpent's tongue. Ethan stared at the surveillance footage, his voice terribly hoarse. Get out. Hanging up the phone, he grabbed his car and stormed out, yelling at his assistant, check. Check all her medical records, flight information, bank accounts. They trembled as he handed him some documents. Mr. Ethan, it's already been checked. Audrey's ID, academic records, even health records, had all been cancelled. As if that person had never existed in the world. The rain lashed against the car. Ethan gripped the steering tightly, his knuckles white. In the rearview mirror, the lights of the mansion slowly receded. When kicked open Tiffany's apartment, she was sitting at her dressing, applying lipstick. In the mirror, her smile froze instantly when she saw his expression. Ethan? She stood up, her voice cloyingly sweet. Why are you suddenly? He grabbed her by the neck and violently pressed her against the wall. You tricked me. His voice was cold as a blade, his fingers tightening until her face turned red, her nails digging scratches into his hand. She struggled, tears welling up. I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan sneered, shaking her off, and pulled a stack of documents from his inner pocket, throwing them in her face. It was the dashcam backup. Tiffany's face instantly went deathly pale. It wasn't like that. She lunged forward, hugging his legs, tears streaming down her face. It was because I loved you. Why did you make me your stand-in in the first place? You were the one who deceived me first. Ethan looked down at her, his gaze like he was looking at rotting flesh. Love? He scoffed, dragging her out by her hair. Then you can also taste the suffering she endured. In the basement, Tiffany's screams continued for 3 days. Ethan didn't lay a hand on her himself, merely watched his bodyguards carry out his orders with cold eyes. She liked to frame others? Then let her reap what she sowed. She likes to fake suicide? Then let her really experience the fear of dying. She liked to be a stand-in? Then use a knife, little by little, to slash that face that so closely resembled Audrey's. Completely destroy it. On the 4th morning, an ambulance from the psychiatric hospital stopped at the mansion's entrance. When the medical staff carried out the stretcher, Tiffany was already delirious, only curling up and mumbling, I'm not her. I'm not her. Ethan stood on the steps, expressionlessly wiping the blood from his hands, and told his assistant, tell the director, never let her out in this lifetime. 5 years later, at the New City Global Finance, under the flashbulbs, I stood on the lectern, dressed in a custom-tailored suit, with the Morantech logo displayed on the large behind me. The integration of AI and neural will be the core of the technological revolution in the next decade. My voice was calm and clear, and thunderous applause erupted from the audience. In a corner, a familiar figure abruptly stood up, knocking over a champagne glass. Ethan. He stared at me, his pupils trembling, as if he'd seen a ghost. I smiled faintly, my gaze lightly sweeping past him, as if he were an insignificant stranger. Midway through the reception, he blocked me in the corridor. Audrey? His voice was hoarse and broken, his fingers almost crushed the wine. I swirled my champagne, chuckling softly. Mr. Ethan, you've mistaken me for someone else. I am Moran. He abruptly grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully strong. Impossible. I slowly pulled my hand back and took a business from my bag, handing it to him. Dr. Moran, Morantech Asia Pacific CEO. If Ethan is interested in AI investment, I said, tilting my head with a smile, you can contact my assistant. As I turned, I heard his suppressed gasps, like a dying trapped beast. Within 3 months, Morantech, with its technological advantage, snatched away Sterling's 3 biggest clients. His stock price plummeted by 40%, and the board of directors held an emergency meeting overnight. His company's stock plummeted, investors withdrew their capital, and partners quickly cut ties. And I, when the stock price hit rock bottom, acquired a significant number of shares at rock bottom prices. A month later, as the largest shareholder, I called a board of directors meeting. Ethan sat at the other end of the lawn, with dark circles under his eyes. His suit was wrinkled, his former vigor long gone. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, smiling as I opened the documents, based on the company's current financial situation, I suggest asset restructuring. He suddenly looked up, and fear finally appeared in his eyes. But it was too late. I had already colluded with other shareholders and orchestrated a scheme to sell off the company's core assets at a low price, then sold off all shares at market price. His business empire collapsed overnight. The next morning, I gently tapped the keyboard, sending the pre-prepared documents to several major media outlets and the city police department. Photos of Tiffany being held captive in the basement. Her medical records from being admitted to the psychiatric hospital after her mental breakdown. The recording of Ethan admitting he wanted to make her life a living hell. Headlines exploded. Tech scion Ethan suspected of illegal detention, abuse, former stand-in lover mentally incapacitated at 10:17 a.m., the Daily's official news feed was the first to publish, breaking, Sterling CEO Ethan suspected of criminal offenses, surveillance shows he violently abused a woman. At 10:23 a.m., the topic hashtag Ethan abuses women instantly became top trending topic. The video clearly showed Tiffany curled up in the basement corner, her clothes stained with blood. Ethan was on the phone nearby, telling his subordinates to have fun with her. At 10:45 a.m., a well-known legal blogger analyzed frame by frame. According to the forensic injury guidelines, the victim in the video constitutes at least minor injury, level 2. Meanwhile, Tiffany's psychiatric hospital interview video was dug up. He locked me in the basement with a golf. In the video, her missing ring finger was visible. At 12 p.m., 300 protesters gathered in front of the Sterling corporate. At 3:20 p.m., the city police department issued a police release. Suspect D, male, 34, has been criminally detained according to law. The trial live stream set a record of 30 million views. The day after the verdict was announced, The York published an article, Abusers Not Justice. And I, at 30,000 feet, turned on airplane. The first snow in Switzerland fell in front of Morantec headquarters floor-to-ceiling window. I stood before the panoramic glass, watching the snowflakes silently cover the lake. My gently knocked, bringing the final brief, Ethan to 15 years in prison for multiple, Sterling officially bankruptcy, Tiffany by suicide in psychiatric hospital. I closed the documents, my fingertip lingering on the company's hot-stamped logo for a moment. On the office desk, the latest issue of Time featured my profile on its cover, with the headline, Tech, Industry of the New. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Professor. The computer project has been approved. Clinical can begin next week. Outside the window, the snow was falling heavier and heavier. Audrey looked towards the snowy landscape outside. It loomed faintly in the twilight, perfectly pristine, without a single blemish. They cautiously asked, should I prepare your travel arrangements to return home? Audrey shook her head, picking up the passport from the office desk. Brand new, embossed in gold, read, Dr. Moran. Book a plane to Iceland, Audrey said. I hear the northern are beautiful there. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the last ray of sunset pierced through the clouds, stretching Audrey's shadow long across the floor. That shadow was no longer a pitiful figure cowering in the corner, but a tall, free S.I. Luette, thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.